The night I found out wasn't loud. There were no slamming doors, no screaming matches, no dramatic confessions. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes the air feel heavy, like the world itself is holding its breath. I remember the exact moment like it's tattooed on my skin. It was a late September evening, a soft wind threading through the open window, carrying the faint scent of rain. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Just one message. One single image that changed everything. He was holding her hand. Not just anyone. Her. My sister. My blood. My best friend. They stood outside the little cafe where he and I used to meet after work. The same corner table, the same cobblestone sidewalk I thought held our memories. He wasn't just standing with her. He was looking at her the way he used to look at me. That quiet, melting gaze. That unspoken language I thought belonged to us. It was a picture, but it felt like a blade. I stared at the screen, my fingers numb, my pulse too loud in my ears. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a rewriting of my story without my permission. I didn't cry right away. People think heartbreak is an explosion, but sometimes it's a slow flood. It doesn't roar. It seeps in, under your skin, into your lungs like water, filling a room you can't escape from. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing, replaying every moment that had led us here. The way my sister used to tease him. The way he used to smile back, too quickly for me to notice then. The late-night study sessions they swore were nothing. My own sister, my own blood, and him, the man who once promised me a future. The next day, I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I didn't throw accusations like knives. No, I wore a plain black dress, tied my hair up, and walked into the world like someone who had just learned how sharp silence could be. I found them together, not hiding, not even pretending anymore. They were sitting in that same cafe, laughing like nothing they were doing was shattering me. He saw me first. His smile faltered. Hers didn't. That was the moment I understood. She wasn't sorry. She had been waiting. "Hey," he said, voice low, guilt lacing every letter. I tilted my head slightly, studying them like strangers. "Hey," I answered calmly. My sister fidgeted, pushing her hair behind her ear, the same nervous tick I'd grown up with. "We didn't mean for it to happen like this." "Like what?" I asked softly. "Like stabbing me in the back? Or like holding hands where we used to sit together?" He opened his mouth. No words came out. I almost laughed. Almost. Because in that moment, something unexpected settled inside me. Not rage. Not despair. Clarity. I walked away that day without slapping him, without crying in front of her, without begging for explanations. I walked away because I knew this wound would not be healed with words. It would be healed with power. Not revenge. Elevation. For weeks after, they became the ghost in every room I entered. My parents didn't say it out loud, but I could feel it. The whispers, the glances, the awkward dinners. She was their golden girl. I was the quiet one. And now she had the boy too. But here's the thing about people who betray you. They expect your destruction. They expect you to crumble so they can stand taller in comparison. They feed on your heartbreak. I didn't give them that. I gave them silence. I gave them the terrifying calm of a woman who is no longer begging to be chosen. While they paraded their relationship like it was some fairy tale, I buried myself in work. Long nights at the office, studying, building, creating. Every ounce of pain became a brick. Every crack in my heart became mortar. I used to picture a life with him. Small house, quiet mornings, shared coffee. But now I pictured something bigger. A life so large they wouldn't just regret losing me. They wouldn't even be able to reach me. Every betrayal has a tipping point. That quiet moment where you stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Watch me." Mine came 2 months later. It was a company networking event. Fancy ballroom, soft jazz, crystal glasses. I wasn't supposed to go, but something inside me said this is the beginning. I walked in wearing a red dress, the kind that demands attention without begging for it. Heads turned, not because I was loud, but because I carry myself differently now. And there he was. Of course he was there. He'd followed her, like he always did, orbiting her like she was his son. But that night, for the first time, he saw me, not as the girl he left, but as the woman he underestimated. His eyes widened slightly. She stiffened next to him. I smiled, the kind of smile that says, I don't need you anymore. As I mingled, shaking hands with people who mattered, I could feel their eyes on me. Her smile faltered. His gaze lingered too long, and I knew they were expecting me to be broken. Instead, I was glowing. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't revenge. It was rebirth. By midnight, I had already secured a dinner with an investor who liked my pitch idea. A project I had built alone in the quiet hours when heartbreak kept me awake. A project they didn't even know existed. I didn't approach them that night. I didn't need to, but when I walked past them on my way out, she whispered, You think this will make you better than me? I paused, looked at her, smiled faintly. I don't think, I said softly. I know. And then I walked away. The truth is, betrayal doesn't break everyone. Some of us turn it into fuel. Some of us rise so high it makes the ones who left squint to even see us again. That night was the first brick in the empire I was about to build, and they had no idea what was coming. The first time success whispered to me, it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't wrapped in gold or applause or headlines. It was quiet. It was the sound of my laptop fan humming at 2:37 a.m., the city asleep, while I built the foundation of something no one else believed in, except me. People think revenge is about showing up to a party in a red dress and making them jealous. But that's only the surface. The real power comes when you no longer care if they're watching. When the focus shifts so completely to your own climb that their names stop echoing in your head. I started my business plan with a single folder on my desktop. No funding, no rich background, no hand to hold, just an idea and a fire in my chest no betrayal could ever put out. They were still together, of course. My sister and him, smiling in pictures like their story was carved out of fate instead of my heart. My mother would call sometimes, her voice tiptoeing around their names, as if mentioning them too loudly would shatter me again. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't breaking anymore. I was forging. Every sleepless night became a step. Every ignored call became motivation. Every time I scrolled past their posts and felt that familiar twist in my stomach, I opened my laptop again. One day, I told myself they'll be watching me instead. I started small. Freelance projects, market research, late-night courses while the world slept. I studied until my eyes burned, not because I was desperate to prove something to them, but because I was finally proving something to myself. I learned how to pitch, how to build a product, how to lead. I learned how to walk into rooms where no one knew my name and make them listen anyway. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, something started to grow. 6 months after that cafe scene, I stood in a co-working space, presenting my idea to a small group of skeptical investors. My hands were trembling at first, but the more I spoke, the steadier they became, because every word came from somewhere real. This wasn't some polished fairy tale. This was built from the ashes of a love story that ended before it began. One of the investors leaned back, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. Why should we believe this will work? I smiled, because I already did when no one else would. The room went silent. Then one of them nodded slowly. Another tapped his pen. A third leaned forward. I walked out of that room with my first deal. Small, modest, but mine. My life started to change in ways even I couldn't predict. I didn't post it online. I didn't announce every small win. I worked in silence, letting success pile up like bricks. Meanwhile, they kept living their glossy little fairy tale. Engagement photos, couple trips, hashtags that looked like happiness. I didn't envy them anymore. I outgrew them. The first time I saw him again after that night at the event, it was by accident. I was coming out of a meeting downtown, wearing a tailored suit and heels that clicked against the pavement like a drumbeat. I felt strong, sharp, untouchable. And there he was, crossing the street with my sister, their hands intertwined. He almost didn't recognize me at first. His eyes lingered a second too long, like his mind was trying to match the version of me he once knew to the woman standing in front of him now. My sister's smile faltered just slightly. Just enough. Wow, he said finally. You look different. I am, I said. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a performance. It was simply the truth. They exchanged a few awkward words, trying to fill the silence. But there was nothing left to say, because I was no longer the girl they left behind. I was the woman they couldn't reach anymore. As the months passed, my company grew faster than I dared to imagine. What started as a late-night folder on my laptop turned into offices, contracts, and a team that believed in my vision. Success has a way of turning pain into distance. One day, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about him in weeks. Not once, but I knew he had. Because people like him, they always come back. Not for you. For the version of you they took for granted. It happened on a random Wednesday. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Hey, can we talk? I didn't need to ask who it was. My chest didn't tighten. My pulse didn't race. I simply stared at the screen and smiled. He had finally realized what I had become. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because true power isn't in showing them how much they hurt you. It's in living a life so far beyond their reach that their regret becomes their only company. At family dinners, things were quieter now. My sister would try to act unbothered. He'd avoid looking at me. And my parents, well, they didn't know where to stand anymore. They used to see me as the quiet one, the second best, the background to my sister's spotlight. Now I was the storm that walked into every room without needing validation. And they all felt it. But success wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving me right, that I could build, rise, and shine without anyone's hand holding mine. Every betrayal leaves a scar. Mine turned into armor. And while they were busy living the life they stole from me, I was busy creating a better one that no one could take away. The night my company landed its first major partnership, I stood on the rooftop of a hotel overlooking the entire city. The skyline shimmered under the soft wash of amber light, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small beneath it. I didn't need anyone beside me to feel whole. I didn't need their approval, their validation, or their version of love. I had built something on my own, something solid, something mine. My phone buzzed again. Same number, same message. Hey, can we talk? This time, it was followed by another. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to see you. A few months earlier, that message would have ripped me apart. I would have stared at it for hours, imagining every conversation, every unfinished word. But now, I turn off my phone and look back at the city. Let him wonder. But life has a way of circling back. 2 weeks later, I attended a gala event. Big names, investors, journalists. The kind of room where the future gets quietly decided over champagne and sharp smiles. I was wearing black, the kind of black that wasn't meant to blend in, but to remind the room that I wasn't there to be looked at. I was there to be remembered. And of course, they were there too. My sister and him. She clung to his arm like she needed the world to know she'd won. He smiled like a man who didn't know his victory was temporary. But when their eyes met mine across the ballroom, something flickered in both their faces, her insecurity, his regret. I walked toward the center of the room, laughing with people who mattered. Not to prove anything, just living. That's the thing about power. You don't have to scream it. You radiate it. I was in the middle of a conversation with a foreign investor when I felt his gaze on me again. I turned slightly, catching him watching me. Not in the way lovers do, but in the way people watch something they should have valued when they had the chance. He excused himself from her side and started walking toward me. I didn't move. I didn't hide. I just let him approach, steady and slow, as if every step he took brought back a memory I'd already buried. Hey, he said softly, as if the word could undo everything. I raised an eyebrow. You finally worked up the courage. His jaw tightened. I deserve that. You deserve a lot of things, I said. My time isn't one of them. He exhaled slowly. I messed up. I know that now. I thought she was the one. I tilted my head slightly, my voice calm, almost gentle. She's my sister. You didn't trip and fall into this. You made a choice. So did I. He swallowed hard. And what choice was that? I leaned closer, just enough so he could hear the steel behind my words. To never let anyone make me feel like second best again. I walked away before he could answer. My sister didn't confront me that night, but her eyes followed me like a shadow. I knew her well, the way her lips pressed together, the way she kept adjusting her dress. She wasn't as secure as she pretended. Because when someone builds their happiness on someone else's pain, they're always waiting for it to collapse. 3 months passed. My company grew faster than I could keep up. Magazine features, invitations to panels, partnership deals. My calendar filled with things that used to be dreams written in notebooks at 2 a.m. Meanwhile, their engagement began to unravel. Whispers traveled through our small circle. He wasn't the same. He had become quiet, distant, always looking back. She, on the other hand, became louder, forcing the perfect picture they wanted everyone to believe. I didn't need to involve myself. Life was already doing what it does best, returning everything people try to bury. I saw them again at a family gathering. My parents had insisted I come, hoping for some kind of forced peace. I almost said no, but part of me wanted to walk into that house as the woman I had become. When I arrived, the room stilled for just a second. My mother blinked. My father smiled nervously. And my sister, she clenched her jaw. She was used to being the star, but I had outgrown the stage. He stood behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes finding me again like they always did. "Hey," she said flatly. "Hey," I replied, with a smile that wasn't sharp or sweet, just steady. The dinner was awkward, small talk wrapped in tight smiles. But I noticed the way his gaze lingered, the way she stiffened every time I laughed. At one point, he followed me to the kitchen when no one was looking. "I can't stop thinking about you," he blurted out. I froze, not out of shock, out of the absurdity of it all. "You made your choice," I said quietly. "I made a mistake." I turned to him slowly, meeting his desperate eyes. "No, you made a decision, and now you live with it." He stepped closer. "I didn't know you'd become this." And there it was, the truth. It wasn't about love. It was about regret. He didn't miss me. He missed the version of me he thought would always wait for him. I did. I whispered. I knew exactly who I was going to become. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving him with the echo of a life he threw away. As weeks turned into months, their engagement slowly crumbled. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. Because real power doesn't chase revenge. It attracts regret. She called me once, voice shaky. "You think you're so perfect, don't you?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to, because she wasn't calling to fight. She was calling because she was losing the game she thought she had won. I never set out to destroy them. I just decided to build something so strong that their betrayal became irrelevant. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, that's exactly what happened. The thing about success is it doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like the sunrise slipping through a window you forgot to close. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't apologize. It just is. My company had just closed its biggest deal yet. A multi-million-dollar contract with a global firm that everyone said was out of my league. The same people who once patted my shoulder with pity were now trying to catch my eye at events. The same friends who went quiet when I fell apart were suddenly remembering my number. But I wasn't the same woman they once overlooked. I didn't build all this to make them regret leaving. I built it so I'd never depend on anyone again. That night, I walked into a high-rise event celebrating the partnership signing. My team was buzzing with energy, the kind that crackles in the air like static. My name wasn't whispered anymore, it was announced. As I greeted partners and shook hands, a flash of movement at the entrance caught my eye. And just like a bad movie trying to play a twist I'd already seen, there they were. My sister. And him. She was dressed up like someone trying to prove she still belonged in my orbit. He looked tired, not physically, but in the way people do when they've been pretending too long. Their eyes found me almost immediately. My sister's smile froze, then stiffened. His face softened into something between longing and disbelief. He wasn't looking at the girl he left behind. He was looking at the woman who had built a world without him. I didn't avoid them. I didn't shrink into the crowd. I walked toward them with the calm of someone who no longer owed them a single thing. "Congratulations," she said tightly, forcing a smile. "Thank you," I replied, my voice smooth, light. "It's been a good year." She glanced at the glittering lights, the people surrounding me, the air of something bigger than anything she'd ever built. For the first time, her eyes flickered with something she'd never let herself feel before. Not triumph, not confidence, insecurity. He stepped forward a little, searching my face. "You really did it." I tilted my head slightly. "I told you I would." He swallowed hard, hands shoved into his pockets like someone trying to hold back words they should have said years ago. My sister's hand slid around his arm, as if tightening her grip on something that was already slipping. As the night went on, they tried to blend into the crowd. But the crowd wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. I gave speeches, shook hands with people who mattered, closed deals that could change lives. And all the while, I could feel his eyes following me. Not because I was flaunting anything, but because real power doesn't have to perform. It shifts the air. At one point, our eyes met again across the room. No words, no gestures, just the silent acknowledgement of two different paths, one soaring upward, one sinking under its own weight. 2 weeks later, everything broke for them. I didn't find out through whispers. My sister showed up at my door. It was raining hard, her makeup streaked down her cheeks, hair clinging to her face. For the first time since that night at the cafe, she looked small. I opened the door without a word. She stood there, shaking slightly, clutching her coat like it could hold her together. "He left," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't flinch. I didn't hug her. I didn't smirk. I just looked at her, not as a sister or an enemy, but as someone who had to face the consequences of the choices she made. "He said he couldn't stop thinking about you," she continued, a bitter laugh slipping out. "Even when he was with me. Especially when he was with me. For a moment, I saw the girl she used to be. The sister who shared secrets with me under the covers. The one who swore we'd never let anything come between us. And yet, she had been the one to draw the first knife." I stepped aside. She came in, dripping water onto my floors, and sat down like the weight of her own choices was crushing her. "I thought I won," she whispered. "I thought. He picked me because I was better. Because you were always the quiet one, the background. But he never looked at me the way he used to look at you. Not once." I stayed silent. "Do you know how it feels to have something you stole still not love you back?" she whispered. The rain beat harder against the windows. "He chose me," she choked out. "But his heart stayed with you." She wanted me to say something, to offer her the same sisterly comfort she once ripped from me. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't here to heal the wounds she created. "You both made your choices," I said quietly. "And I made mine." She looked up, her eyes brimming. "And what was that? To rise so high neither of you could ever drag me down again." For days after, he tried calling too. Messages, voicemails. His voice shaky, desperate, threaded with the kind of regret that comes too late. But every time the phone lit up with his name, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel longing. I felt nothing. Because the most powerful revenge isn't hate. It's indifference. At the next event, reporters asked me about my journey. How I built something from nothing. How I rose after betrayal. I looked at the sea of flashing cameras and smiled. "Sometimes the people who hurt you are the ones who build your fire without realizing it," I said calmly. "They think they've broken you. But really, they've given you the reason to rise." The room erupted in applause. And somewhere out there, I knew they were watching. Not because I needed them to, but because life has a way of making sure the people who underestimated you see everything. That night, I walked home alone, not lonely but powerful. The city lights didn't feel too big anymore. They felt like they belonged to me. The betrayal that once cut me open was now the foundation I stood on. And I hadn't just survived. I had won. The thing about rising is, at some point, even the people who broke you can't help but look up. They don't have to like it. They don't even have to say it out loud. But they see it. They feel it in the way your name travels, in the way your silence is louder than their noise ever was. Weeks passed after my sister's tear-streaked visit. I didn't reach out to him. I didn't respond to his messages. I didn't ask what went wrong. I already knew. It was simple. He had chosen a path that led away from me, and life had simply led him right back to the consequences of it. The truth is, people like him always expect the door to stay cracked open. They think they can leave when they want and return when they feel regret. But the version of me he left behind no longer existed. One evening, I was invited to speak at a conference, the biggest I'd ever attended. Rows of chairs stretched into the distance, filled with young entrepreneurs, media people, investors, dreamers. As I stood backstage, mic clipped to my collar, I realized something that made my heartbeat slow instead of race. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. When I walked onto that stage, the lights were blinding. A sea of faces looked up at me, waiting. A woman who once sat crying on her bedroom floor because she wasn't enough was now the person people leaned in to listen to. I opened with the truth. Betrayal doesn't break you. It shows you who you are when there's no one left to hold you up. And if you're brave enough to keep walking, you will rise higher than the ones who pushed you down. The crowd was silent, not the heavy kind, but the charged kind. The kind that means they're feeling every word. I spoke for 40 minutes about the nights that felt endless. The way it hurts to realize the people you love can make you feel replaceable. And then about how power isn't handed to you. It's built brick by brick with blood, sweat, and every ounce of pain turned into fuel. When I stepped off that stage, I wasn't just a speaker. I was a storm they'd never forget. 2 days later, as if the universe wanted to test how far I'd really come, I saw him again. This time, it wasn't an event. It wasn't planned. I was leaving my office late, and the night air was cold and sharp. I pulled my coat tighter around me as the building lights spilled across the pavement. And there he was, leaning against his car like a man who didn't know whether to run or beg. He looked different now. The easy arrogance was gone. The confident smirk replaced with something raw. His eyes found mine like they always did, except this time, they didn't make me flinch. He took a hesitant step forward. "You look unstoppable." I didn't answer. I didn't know him a single word. "I messed up," he continued. "I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought your sister was. I don't even know what I thought anymore. But it was never her. It was always you." I let the silence stretch between us until it grew heavy. He waited for the reaction he used to get from me. Tears, hesitation, softness. But the woman standing in front of him now wasn't the girl he walked away from. "No," I said finally. "It wasn't always me. If it was, you would have stayed." He winced. "I was stupid." "Yes," I said calmly. "You were." He exhaled shakily, as if the cold was cutting through him. "I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I ruined everything. But I'd do anything just to have one conversation with you. Just to fix something." I tilted my head, studying him like he was a stranger on the street, because in a way he was. "The problem is, you didn't just break us. You made me realize I didn't need you to begin with." His lips parted, but no sound came. "I don't hate you," I added softly. "I just don't care anymore." His face crumpled, not in anger, in understanding, because deep down, he knew this was the one outcome he was never prepared for, my indifference. I walked past him without another word. The sound of my heels on the pavement felt louder than his apologies ever could. After that night, he tried again. Emails, flowers, friends reaching out on his behalf. The kind of desperate reaching that always comes when the one they left stops waiting. But I didn't let him back into the world I'd built. Not even a corner of it, because he didn't belong there. Meanwhile, my sister had gone quiet. I didn't see her at family dinners. My mother's voice trembled when she spoke about her. Guilt had settled into the spaces between us like fog. One day, she showed up again. Not angry this time, just hollow. "I can't hate you anymore," she whispered at the door. "I've spent so much time being jealous of you. But now I just wish I'd been more like you." I looked at her for a long time. Part of me wanted to remind her of the betrayal, the laughter she shared with him behind my back. But another part, the part that had outgrown bitterness, understood something deeper. She had already punished herself more than I ever could. "You don't have to be like me," I said quietly. "You just have to stop tearing down people who love you." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't hug her. Forgiveness wasn't going to be a grand reunion. It was just release. For me, not for her. My company reached global headlines that year. Interviews, awards, expansion. I didn't look back once. The world that once felt too small for my heartbreak was now big enough to hold my victory. I had become everything they said I couldn't be. Everything he thought I wouldn't become. And the most beautiful part, I didn't need him to see it, but he did anyway. I remember the last message he ever sent. It wasn't a long apology. No declarations of love. Just 5 words. "I wish I chose you." I stared at it for a while. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. He didn't break me. He built me without meaning to. And that will be the thing he'll live with forever. It's strange how time changes the weight of everything. Months earlier, just hearing his name was enough to make my stomach twist and my pulse race. Now it was nothing more than an echo, distant, powerless. I had stepped so far ahead of the girl he betrayed that I could barely remember what it felt like to need him. The world was different now. I was different now. I had offices in multiple cities, a team that looked to me for leadership, my name etched in magazines, my voice invited stages. My life was no longer orbiting around who stayed or left. It revolved around what I chose to build. And he was part of a past that no longer had a claim on me. On a crisp winter morning, I was scheduled to deliver a keynote speech at one of the largest entrepreneurship summits in the country. Thousands of people, cameras, press. It wasn't just a moment, it was a milestone. The kind of moment that changes the trajectory of everything. I stood backstage, taking a slow breath. The air smelled faintly of coffee and stage lights, and I could feel the energy from the crowd vibrating through the floor. My assistant whispered, "You're up in 30 seconds." And that's when I saw him. He was standing in the audience, a few rows back. He wasn't supposed to be there, but of course life had a way of letting ghosts sneak into your brightest moments. Not to haunt you, but to witness what they lost. His posture was smaller than I remembered. His eyes held a quiet ache. He wasn't here to win me back. Not anymore. He was here because he finally understood the kind of woman he'd walked away from. I didn't flinch. I didn't hide. I stepped onto that stage. The lights hit me like a spotlight cutting through fog. 1,000 faces tilted upward, waiting. I gripped the mic and let my voice cut through the silence. When people betray you, I began, they think they've ended your story. What they don't realize is they've simply given you a sharper pen. A ripple moved through the crowd. I spoke about ambition, resilience, the fire that betrayal plants deep in your bones. I told them how I built my empire not from comfort, but from pain, from nights spent staring at ceilings wondering why wasn't enough. And then I told them the truth that burned in me. I was always enough. I just needed to stop proving it to the wrong people. The applause was thunder. And when I looked down, I saw him. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't clapping like the rest. He was standing perfectly still, watching a woman he could never touch again. After the event, he tried to catch me in the lobby. I walked with my head held high, surrounded by journalists and organizers. His voice broke through the noise, low but familiar. "Can we talk?" I paused, turned, and faced him fully for the first time in months. There was no tremor in my heart this time. No flicker of old wounds. Just calm. "What would we even talk about?" I asked. He looked down, then back at me, pain etched into his face. About how stupid I was. About how I lost the best thing I ever had. About how every night I wish I could undo everything. I tilted my head slightly, not with cruelty, but with clarity. The thing is, I don't wish that. I don't want to undo anything. His eyes widened slightly, as if my words cut deeper than any anger ever could. Because what you did, I continued softly, made me find me. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Winter melted into spring, and with it came a new chapter. Not one shaped by loss, but by the power of everything I had claimed for myself. My company expanded internationally. My calendar filled with partnerships I used to only dream of. I started mentoring young women who were told they were too quiet or not enough, the same way I once was. I wanted them to know, the world bends when you stop waiting for permission. My sister had disappeared from public view. We weren't close anymore, but we weren't enemies either. We existed in the quiet understanding of people who once loved each other, but now lived on different sides of history. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, she appeared outside the building. No makeup, no carefully rehearsed smiles. Just a woman who had learned the hard way what choices cost. "I'm happy for you," she said softly. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see the girl who betrayed me. I saw someone who had fallen apart and had to face it alone. "I know," I said simply. She nodded, eyes glistening. "You deserve better. From him. From me. From everyone." "Maybe," I said, but I gave it to myself anyway. And with that, she walked away. Not in bitterness this time, but in peace. The last time I saw him was on a summer night. Years later, I was walking through the city after a dinner with investors. The streetlights cast soft golden halos on the pavement, and the air smelled like rain and night. He was sitting alone outside a small cafe, the same one where everything began. His hair was messier, his posture heavier. When he saw me, his expression froze in a way that almost felt like time folding in on itself. He stood slowly, as if he didn't know whether to speak or stay silent. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi," I replied calmly. For a moment, it felt like the universe was giving us a full circle. But I didn't feel longing, or anger, or hurt. I felt free. He stared at me like a man looking at the life he could have had but threw away. "You really made it." I smiled faintly. "I was always going to." His throat tightened. "I know. I just wish I'd been smart enough to stay." I didn't respond, because some apologies don't need answers. As I walked away, my heels clicking softly against the wet pavement, I realized something I hadn't fully put into words before. The greatest victory isn't proving them wrong. It's living so fully that their memory becomes nothing more than a faded chapter in a story they were never meant to finish with you. He chose my sister. He chose myself. And in the end, that choice was the one that changed everything. The years that followed weren't about rebuilding anymore. They were about living, about walking into rooms and no longer carrying the weight of who left or who stayed. My name had become something people respected. My voice carried meaning in circles that once ignored it. But the biggest change wasn't in the world around me. It was in the silence inside me. The kind that used to hurt now felt peaceful. One evening, I returned to that same rooftop where everything started, the night I first decided I'd rise instead of break. The city stretched endlessly before me, alive with the hum of stories being written every second. I stood there with a glass of wine in hand, watching the skyline flicker. My reflection on the glass looked stronger, calmer. My assistant called to remind me of the awards gala that night. I was being honored as Entrepreneur of the Year, a title that once seemed impossible, now just another chapter. I smiled, thanked her, and whispered to myself, "We made it." At the gala, cameras flashed. Faces I hadn't seen in years reappeared, dressed in admiration disguised as politeness. I'd become the kind of woman people whispered about, not for scandal, but for success that came from surviving fire. My speech was simple. I used to think being chosen was proof of worth. But I learned that choosing yourself is where power begins. Every person who doubted me was right about one thing. I wasn't the same. I became more. Applause thundered, but my heart stayed steady. I wasn't speaking for them. I was speaking to the version of me who once stared at her sister, holding the man she loved, and thought she'd lost everything. After the ceremony, I walked outside to catch my breath. The air was cool, scented with rain again, like the night this story began. A car pulled up beside the curb. He stepped out, older now, worn. His eyes held both pride and sorrow. "I saw the news," he said quietly. "You deserve all of it." "Thank you," I replied. He hesitated. "Do you ever think about us?" I looked at him for a long moment, not with anger, not even nostalgia, just truth. "Sometimes, but not the way you think. I don't miss what we were. I'm just grateful it ended. Because it had to." He nodded slowly, his shoulders sinking under the weight of his own choices. "You turned the pain I caused into something beautiful." "I turned myself into something beautiful," I corrected softly. He gave a small, broken smile. "I know, and that's why I'll never forgive myself." He walked away into the night, a ghost dissolving into the blur of headlights and rain. I didn't call after him. I didn't need to. Some stories don't need an epilogue. They just fade. I turned back toward the city, the noise, the lights. Somewhere in that glittering chaos, my sister was rebuilding too. We hadn't spoken in months, but I'd heard she was working again, trying to stand on her own. I hoped she found her peace, because I'd found mine. When I got home, I kicked off my heels and stood barefoot in my living room, surrounded by reminders of how far I'd come. Not luxury, not trophies, just quiet, independence, peace. People think success feels like applause. It doesn't. It feels like silence, the kind where you finally stop proving and just exist. I walked to the mirror one last time, looking at the woman staring back. Her eyes didn't carry pain anymore, just power, grace, freedom. He chose my sister. She chose him. But I chose success. I chose peace. I chose me. And in the end, that choice wasn't revenge. It was redemption.